Hey, well, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Prison Bosses. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Clover Perez, a true embodiment of resilience and I guess I'll say transformation. From her journey through federal prison to becoming a leading voice for systematic change, Dr. Perez has dedicated her life to advocating for formerly incarcerated women and girls as the founder of A Beautiful HEART Ministries, as well as the host of the podcast, Converse with Clover. She provides hope, resources, and a platform for reform. So, with her entrepreneur ventures, being an ambassadorship with Susan G. Komen Foundation, and the academic achievements at Columbia University, Dr. Perez continues to reshape narratives and drives impactful change in the criminal justice system. I'm hopeful that her powerful story and unwavering commitment to reform will inspire each and every one of you listeners tuning in today. And with that being said, thank you for being here today, Dr. Clover. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your platform with me and all the great work that you're doing.
Now,
This is awesome.
I appreciate that, and thank you very much. Well, I was, as I was doing my research around your story, I just was really moved by what you're doing, but what you've come from. I've never been in the feds. I was just more like I was in the states and counties, and so I'm always fascinated by learning more about that. But I wanted to kind of just dive in and just give you the platform. Tell us a little bit about your upcoming, where you're from, just a little bit about who you are.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. So originally, I was born in Jamaica, West Indies.
Mm,
My mom is Jamaican. My dad is from India.
mm,
And I came to the United States at the age of 13. Had a normal upbringing, very fortunate to have a loving and doting family. My dad was not a part of my upbringing for many reasons, but nonetheless, I never felt like I was lacking in anything. My mom provided for me very well,
mm-hmm.
and only child, right? And so
Yeah, yeah.
you just imagine, that and just ending up in prison, especially from Jamaica, where
Mm,
they look down on folks that go to prison, especially women, right?
mm.
And so I have two wonderful boys. One was killed in 2008.
My condolences.
Shortly after I went to federal prison.
Mm.
A grandmother, a mother, a friend, or sister, just everything that I have. I wear so many hats, in so many different people's lives, and I'm just grateful.
Yeah. That, that is tough. I mean, coming from Jamaica, as I sit here drinking my ginger beer, by the way.
Yeah,
But
right.
at what age did you come to the States? From
I
the
came when I was 13 years old. 13.
13. Gotcha. All right. And so, what actually, given your upbringing, and like you said, it's not common that you hear that. What led you into the pathway that towards incarceration?
So, shortly after I graduated from college, I started to work at a law firm in the city
Hmm.
in Manhattan. And they specialize in different laws, but what really caught my attention was the immigration part. And
Mm-hmm.
so that resonated, with me being someone that came into the country. Yes, I came in legally, but my mom at one point did come in with a visitor's visa and she overstayed her time.
Mm-hmm.
So she became illegal. And so hearing that story and hearing the story of so many different people who, wanted to be legalized in the country
Yep.
and could not. I was kind of drawn to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started doing immigration work, did very well, started my own business as well, doing, immigration work
Yep.
uh, as well. So one thing I would say about me is that I am a fast learner, so I catch on real fast. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, okay, now they're doing all this. I could do it too. You don't have to be an attorney, right? But, I was a paralegal, so I started doing it, did very, very well. And in 2004, I did an amnesty program that it was previously open in 2000. I would say, I think it's in 1989. I wasn't doing immigration work at that time. and there was an influx of application that was presented to the immigration services, and they did not have enough green cards, so they closed down the program.
Mm.
And so the people started a class action lawsuit. So immigration had to reopen the program, and they reopened it in 2004. And that's when I started doing it and submitted some fraudulent paperwork to immigration on behalf of three of my clients,
Gotcha.
and got caught.
Gotcha.
Landed in my butt in federal prison.
So it sounds like though leading all the way up to that, like you weren't like a problem child, had never really been in trouble before. So this is your first encounter with the law, and it's federal. Oof.
Hmm. Yes, yeah,
What like
yeah.
what?
Well, I will say let's back up a little bit because the first person that got involved with the state, and then the state gave me probation,
Mm,
and then I did the probation, and as soon as I did the probation, then the feds came
swoop
and
in.
picked it up.
Dang. So
So
they
mhm,
basically you got charged with the same thing twice ultimately, right?
they just switched it around. They just switched the charges around. They know what they're doing,
That's
so they're good at what they
a
do,
fact.
and that's why their conviction rate is so high.
That's a fact.
So they just switch the charges around, and but basically for the same thing. And
Mm,
so yeah, and that was the reason, one of the reasons why I decided to fight it, because I felt like it was the same case, and I did my time,
mm-hmm,
even though time, but I did the probation
mm-hmm.
part of it. So I shouldn't need to be incarcerated or be retried for the same thing.
Agreed.
And I lost,
Mm.
yeah.
So you blew trial,
Yeah, I blew trial.
and so how much time did they end up get sentencing you to after?
I was sentenced to 121 months. That's 10 years, 1 month.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
wow. In the Fed, you do what 85% of the time.
Percent, yes. And so, the thing with the feds is that they penalize you if you decide that you want to go to trial. And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
even though we know that it's our constitutional right, to go to trial if we choose to,
Yep.
trust me, you're penalized for that.
Yep.
And one thing I will say that my lawyer had said to me is that I don't want you to testify, because if
Mm-hmm,
you testify and you're found guilty, that will be two additional points, because the feds work with a point system. And so that will
mm-hmm.
be two additional points. So had I testified, instead of getting 121 months, which is 10 years in a month, I probably would have gotten 12 years.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. And so I could imagine from not really being in any trouble before to now being sentenced to 10 years, in that moment when it happened, like describe the emotionally, where were you? Like, how were you feeling?
So there was a lot of things that was happening in my life at that time. As I said earlier, my son was killed. My son was murdered, right? And so
Mm,
I was dealing with the individuals that killed my son. So it's almost like I was going to their trial, going to my trial. So
mm,
I would say that I was not present. I was functioning like I was, but I wasn't. I felt
mm,
like somehow I kind of stepped out of my body, right? And so
mm,
I was operating, but it wasn't really Clover that was operating, if that makes sense.
mm,
And so I was just truly numb.
mm,
But the only thing that I remembered at that time, I just wanted it to be over with. I just wanted to go to sleep.
mm,
I never thought that I would go to prison. One thing I will say.
mm,
And so when I was found guilty, I thought that, I would have gone back home, because prior to that, when I was arrested, I was home on a bond. So I thought that they would release me, but
mm.
they immediately demanded me.
Yep,
So yeah.
man. And so now I'm sure there were all kinds of emotions early on. You ultimately, I'm assuming, did 8.5 years in time. And so
7.5.
now, now coming into the prison system, it's your first time. I'm assuming like you stayed away from like gangs and things of that nature. You were a little bit. more, a little bit more mature than I think a lot of times people come into prisons. And so, what was that experience of life coming in as a woman who had been successful in business, and now here you are incarcerated?
That's a good question. I will say that even though I was going through all of those things, it's just a plethora of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I will say is that I'm not a punk, right?
Mm, mm,
That I'm not a punk. So my point of reference when it comes to prison is what I saw on media. So I was like really psyched up and I felt like, hey, I just lost my son.
mm,
I'm now going to prison. I have nothing else to lose. And so whoever wanted to fight, bring it on. That's just how I felt. And went in not being scared, right?
yep,
I went in very brazen.
mm,
And so I felt like that was my way of surviving, right? I couldn't be, just like I didn't, I was scared. I didn't want to be scared, right? And
mm,
actually, I didn't even feel scared,
mm,
if that makes sense. I just didn't feel scared. I was like, as I said, I just wanted to just sleep. I just wanted to do whatever time. And initially, once I was found guilty, I didn't know the time that I was going to get, right? Because I had to go back and be
sentence.
sentenced.
Yep.
So I went to MDC Brooklyn
Mm,
and
mm,
stayed at
infamous.
MDC Brooklyn. Yeah, for 13 months.
Mm,
For 13 months before I was finally sentenced and then sent to Danbury. Yeah, so MDC, the infamous
mm,
MDC, it's like a box inside of a box. You don't even know when it's morning unless you have a watch, because there's no windows, there's no sunlight. It's a high-rise building. You just can't. There's no place for you to go outside. No, the rec is just in another room.
mm,
And so, if you want to sleep, that's the place to sleep, right? And so, it wasn't a lot of things that was going on there because it's a holding facility
mm-hmm.
for folks that are waiting to be sentenced, right?
Yep.
And so, no one wants to start any problems, right? Especially when they know that they're going to be sentenced or on pretrial.
Yep.
They just calm. And so that was outside of the fact that it was missing all those things that we take for granted, like fresh air,
Mm-hmm.
just
Son.
rain and all those
Yep.
things. Outside of all of those things, yeah, it wasn't a place where people start a lot of problems.
Gotcha. So now you end up being sentenced. Um, you go away. Now, while you're in the feds, do they have like a lot of programming, education at the time? Like, what sort of things were you able to get involved in to continue to develop during that time, or did you get involved in anything during that time?
Yeah. So, with the feds, one of the things that they are mandated to do is to provide GED programs for folks who do not have their GED.
Mm-hmm.
When you have someone that's going in that have their GED, that have their their a college degree, or even someone who basically have their business and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to find programs for folks like that.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard. And I don't know about the other facilities, but I will say that um, initially when I went in, I went to the FCI before I was sent up to the camp.
Gotcha.
And you have culinary classes there if you want to take that.
Mm-hmm.
You have RDAP, which was I was not qualified for because there was no drugs that was in my PSR
Yep.
report. I never used drugs. I never drink, or whatever the case may be.
Mm.
So I did say that I wish that they had gambling in there because I definitely would have been at the top of the class.
Got you. Got you.
They didn't have that, right? And so so they had all these different kind of programs. They had the dog programs, things like that. Those were not things that I was interested in doing. I went in with the mentality that I have reached a point in my life that not that I couldn't learn,
Mm-hmm.
but the programs that they had there was not programs that I needed to take, right? I didn't
Yep.
see how those programs would benefit me. One of the things that I did want to take as what was the Spanish class.
Mm.
But when you go into prison and you have this long stretch of time, you're at the bottom of these lists for
Yep.
these classes, right? And
Yep.
so you have to wait until it's your turn. So eventually, when I did go to the camp, I realized that it was the females, the ladies that was there. We were the one that actually created these programs. They didn't have any program.
Mm,
We went down to the GED. We taught the GED class. There was nothing
mm,
there.
mm.
Mhm.
That's powerful. So you guys were creating programming for other individuals because it just didn't exist at the time.
Just didn't exist, right?
Gotcha,
Hmm.
gotcha. And so, what do you think? And so, all right. So now let's just fast forward past the incarceration stage because everyone, most who are listening, understand that. One thing I always like to encourage everyone who is listening, though, take advantage of whatever programs are there. But I love like what Dr. Perez just mentioned. If it's not there, this is an opportunity to create it. And and that's how you can continue to have more impact and leave your positive stamp in the situation, as well as giving you your mission and your why during that time. Because Dr. Perez don't have to say it, but I'm pretty sure that helped become part of her mission and helped her get through that time was by helping other people. And it's
Absolutely.
so now you're out. You get released. What do you get released to? Do you have I know you had business before, but now it's 10 years later. Is there the business is still around, or do you have to start fresh? Like, what happens when you get out?
Right. So in 2019, I was released, and I was released to a halfway house where I would have to spend 6 months, and then I had another 9 months that because I got a 9 months. No, I'm sorry, 6 months, and then I had another 4 months, so it's a total of 9 months.
Gotcha.
Um, no, I'm just trying to figure it. It was 10 months. I'm sorry, 10 months. To the halfway house, and then 4 months home and home confinement.
Gotcha.
And so initially, I would say that I find that the halfway house is much more stricter than the prison
Mm,
that I was in,
mm,
right? And because you have these young people now in position, and they figure like, okay, now they're gonna boss us around and tell
mhm,
us what to
mm,
do because they can easily write us up, and then we can go back.
yep.
And it was a sad situation because there are many people that's coming home and did not have that support system, right?
Very true.
Did not have people that could provide them a cell phone, or did not have the
Hmm.
money for a cell phone because one of the things that when you're in the halfway house, you have to have a cell phone where whenever every move that you make, you have to be in contact with the cell phone.
Mm,
And so when I left, there was a payphone on the street, right? And then came home, there was no
mhm.
longer any
That's right.
payphone. So
Yep.
you have to have a cell phone. And can you just imagine now not understanding how to use those smartphones?
Hmm.
But thank God, with the halfway house that I was at, we had to have the old flip phone. We were not allowed to have the
Smart.
smartphones, right?
Hmm.
Because we was not supposed to be on social media, and so that was able, I was able to maneuver that because I it was so antiquated,
Hmm.
who knew how to use that. And so eventually now we was able to get the smartphone. And I remember when my son got the phone from me, I looked at it, and when I looked at it, I just didn't say anything, but he immediately understood that there was a deficit, that I just did not know how to
Hmm.
use it, right?
Yep.
And so he didn't even ask any question. He just sat me down and he says, "This is what you need to do, and this is what you need to do."
Mm.
Other people who don't have that, who
Yep.
don't have that support
Yep.
system to walk them through that. And so those were my experience at the halfway house, folks being violated and sent back because they did not have a phone,
Mm.
violated because they did not have the proper clothing to go to a job interview and things like that.
So if you can't afford a phone, you get violated for that, or do they
Yes,
provide
because
you with a phone?
don't provide you any phone. The only thing that they provide you with is car fare. And once you get a job, you have to pay the halfway house like 10% off your salary. You have to pay that. And then in addition to that, if you have restitution, you have to pay your restitution. If you have to buy clothing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you don't have that support system,
Mm-hmm.
then what happens to you? You are violated because you don't have a phone, and I I realize that even sometimes when you do have the phone and you call in, sometimes they don't even document the fact that you called in.
Mm.
And so if you have your phone to prove that, well, you did dial that number and you did call in,
Yep.
you're violated for that. So it
Wow.
was just things that I found that the halfway house was very, very hard
Mm.
than the camp that I was at.
That's wow, man. So now you end up getting out of the halfway house, and so during that time, did you have to find employment, or did you?
Yeah, yes, yeah. You have 30 days. You have to file employment by the 30 days. So I got a job as a 311 operator. That didn't last long. It lasted probably about 2 weeks.
Mm.
And yeah, because then I got accepted in Columbia University,
Mm.
and I went to my boss and I said, "Listen, I need to work on my schedule." So he's like, "Okay, well, this is the time that you need to be here. So you better decide whether it's school or work." So I said, "Okay, bye," and I just left. But one of the things that I will say is this: that I never, even while I was incarcerated, I never thought about that it was going to be difficult for me to find a job. I never, because I kept myself marketable, right? My family, my friends would send things in. So whatever that was going on the outside, if any new applications, any new things was going on, I kept myself abreast. But I never thought about that. And I kind of, I knew my situation more than anyone else does, right? So I can talk my way, and explain, this is my situation. This is
Yep.
what happened.
Yep.
Okay, I can't change the past.
Yep.
This is it. Either you take me or you don't, or you just leave me,
Yep.
right? That's what it is.
Yep.
And so I interviewed probably a couple of days after I quit. I interviewed for a job as a office manager
Mm.
because I said, I'm not starting. I'm not going back to the bottom of
Yes, it did. Right.
no, 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 no. And so I got a job, and I was able to. It was a long interview
Mm.
for 2 hours, and then I had a second call back, and she just kept asking me all these questions about my prison, but her concern was that she felt like I wasn't going to stay in that position
Mm-hmm.
long, and she wanted someone to be there long term. And I convinced her that yeah, I
Be
would
there.
be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up getting the job
Okay.
as an office manager, making 60,000. I'm like, yeah, and so
Mm-hmm.
I was pumped up. And so that was it for me. That's all what I needed. And I just kind of hit the ground running, going to school, working, and just doing my thing and just trying to build my organization at the same time. So that's what I was doing. I landed in myself into two spaces, one with the job as an office manager and one with being the ED at my organization. And I just kept building until I was able to, then comes COVID pandemic,
Yep.
and everything was shut down. And while I was home, right, I built. And so once everything was over with, I was able to just go straight into my organization instead of going back
Mm.
as the office manager.
Continued growth. Yo, and for the
Yeah.
listeners, if you didn't catch that, there's so much little jewels that was dropped. One thing I took away was a winning mindset. She said, she worked the one job, realized that ain't it, and I'm not gonna continue to invest in similar opportunities. Now I'm taking a step up. I'm not going back. Like always, the mindset just continually moving forward. So I think of that as a winning mindset. She understood herself. She said she wasn't really worried about a job because she understood her branding. She's always been branded herself, like how she marketed herself while incarcerated, as well as outside of incarceration. Something that I always talk about, the importance of that, having a positive brand. And then she understood she had strong communication. Like this is all stuff that if you don't take the time to learn who you are, when you have moments in life that are challenging, you don't know how to show up. And I just love how she knew who she was. So those things weren't really scary to her. She came out and understood and just kept growing. And then when turbulence hit, like COVID, it was an opportunity for her to continue to build on her path. She decided she's going to continue to invest in her. Where a lot of people were complacent, during COVID. A lot of people, just because checks were flowing and they didn't have to work, people digressed. But it's the people who continued to work hard, stay consistent throughout all times. Those are always the winners. And this right here is just a story highlighting, how it's possible for all of us to win after incarceration. So I'm sorry, but I just had to drop that because those are some jewels that I couldn't let go of people's head.
Thank you. Yeah, you have sometimes you go through these crucible moments,
Mhm.
and instead of you know, just being complacent, like you said, you have to use that situation as a ladder up.
Yeah,
And so instead of going back down, you just continue to climb.
that's right. That's right. And so you start your organization. What's the name of your org, and what do you guys do?
So, A Beautiful Heart Ministries, that's my organization. Actually, A Beautiful Heart Ministry was birthed while during the last 2 years of my
Mm,
incarceration.
mm,
So yeah, I started it while I was in prison, and so we provide reentry services to women and girls coming home from prison. Drawn again from my experience in seeing the lack of,
yeah.
for women coming home, right, and the barriers that they have to go through. And so, even though that was not my situation, nonetheless, I felt it
Mm,
because, I always feel like I am an empath. And so when people are going through certain situations, I feel it. And I never wanted anyone, especially women, right?
mm,
And the women that I came across to be in prison, mothers,
mm,
when
yeah.
they could have been better off with alternative programs. So why not find a way to help them, right? Because I believe that prison, it's set up for you to go in,
Mhm.
but then they're coming home, there's nothing. And I
Yeah.
always wonder,
Yes.
do they ever, when they're designing these prisons, do they ever think that people would come back home?
I don't think
And
they
and
wanted us to come back home.
right, I
Mhm.
don't believe that, because there are no really resources. Well, now they are, and but when I came home, there was a lack. There was a
Agreed.
lack in
Agreed.
that, and
Yep.
so yeah, I wanted to just make sure that these ladies come into a place, a loving place with no judgment, and understand that
Yep.
I was in that situation as well, and just making sure that we just have a conversation and provide them with the resources that they need, understanding that it's not a one size fit all solution.
Very
What it
true.
is that you tell me what it is that you need,
Mm,
and let's work on providing you what you need because we don't want you to go back to prison.
very true.
So don't look at what Mary or Sue need over there. Tell me what Clover needs, right?
Mm,
And so
mm.
that is how we kind of work on the individuals that we and service the women that we do by tailoring it to fit that person's needs.
I love it. I think that's the only approach that is actually impactful because for years they've had cookie cutter approaches and stuff, and it's like a one
Right.
size fits all. Yet we're all individuals, and one size can't fit all. Like I can't be placed in a box, and so I just think that's the best approach, and I think it's the best when it comes from people who actually have the experience because it's not something that we might have read in a book, even though reading in a book is great, and that's what I encourage people to seek knowledge. But when we're talking real lived experience, like I can't be as impactful for someone who was homeless as someone who actually experienced homelessness and now owns properties and is doing their thing. Like, and so I just think that lived experience is everything. And so I love that you've doing that and you've gotten into that pathway. Now, are you in terms of the organization, do you service just a specific area, or are you like where are you guys based out of? Because our listeners are from all over, and so I want you to be a resource for as many of them that you possibly can.
Right. So what's different about ABHM is that we basically don't serve one areas, right? I believe that we have clients in Baltimore, we have
Mm,
in DC, we have in Maine, we have in Washington State, we have in California, we have in Connecticut, we just got someone in Chicago. I believe that when someone calls you, it doesn't matter where they call you from.
yes.
They're calling you because they need help, right?
Yep.
And so, who am I as a person who have been through the system to deny another sister the support that they need
Mm,
because they're in another state?
mm,
Obviously, you're not getting what you need from within your state.
that's right.
So, if I can provide you that service that you need, right? And even if it's something that I can't provide, I am going to connect you with someone
Right.
that could provide it. And not only that, I'm going to do diligent by following up
Yep.
to make sure that whatever you're looking for, that you get that service.
Yep.
So because of that, our footprints is wide, right?
Mm,
Because we don't just serve folks in New York. And I find that sometimes it's very difficult to get funding because they want us to be,
fighting
like
for
I
the
said,
same.
inside of a box, right? And so we're not going to fund you because you serve all these different areas, and we don't want our funding to go, and I can't tell you not to take this money that they give for funding and serve someone in Philadelphia or
Mm-hmm.
serve someone in Washington. And I'm not going to sit down. I'm going to say, okay, you keep your money. That's fine. Because what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to sit down and figure out, well, should I take this $20 over here, $100, and not take care of this person because they're from another state? No, I'm not going to do that. I don't have the time to
I'm with
do
you.
that, right?
I'm with you.
And don't have resources to do that. So I'm not going to do that. But I always tell my grand funders, this is what I do. Okay. And these are the areas that I serve. And I'm still open to serve other areas. I
Mhm.
want people to call me. I want them to say, okay, that I'm not getting these services over here. Can you help me? Because I'm not going to turn them away.
That's right. No, I love it. I love it. Now, do you currently do any do you guys offer in institution services as well as once people are released, or like how do you, in terms of the services, what are
So,
your population?
right. So the only thing that we do as far as institutional wise is we have care packages that we provide. So we send it into the state prisons. Fortunately, we're not allowed to do those things in the feds,
Mm,
but we're allowed to send in. So, for example, a person that may be indigent, right? They can go to their case managers, and their case managers will reach out to us, and then we will send in the care packages, with toiletries for them. We're
right.
also open that if someone, what we lately we have come across folks that are in Rikers Island
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have money to buy clothing, that so we'll order the stuff on Amazon for them and send it in directly to them. So those
Mm,
are the only type of, as far as going into the prison to serve, we have not done that as yet, but nonetheless, we do. I would say more so of a external services where
yeah,
we provide from the outside on the inside.
which makes sense, and it kind of to me it speaks more to the mission, so that makes perfect sense.
Right, right.
No, I love it. So now, for the listeners, would you have a lot of our listeners, well, actually, just in general, over 60% of individuals who have become incarcerated have to explore some level of entrepreneurship or have a side hustle just because of with hiring discriminations or ceilings in terms of, only being provided entry level roles. It's, you need to survive. It's people need money. And so, what do you say to individuals in your network, or you might mentor women coming home around entrepreneurship, being that you have the experience and you continue and have been continually doing it?
Right. It's a good question. So I said, find your niche. What are you good at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the things that you are good at and try to work on that and build on that, right? And so
Yeah,
oftentimes we
I agree.
see someone may want to go into a particular business because it's doing great, right? And it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, I want to go into that. That person's doing that, but that may not be your lane. Find
Talk
your
about
lane, right? Find your tribe of people that can actually support you and help you build. So I
yep.
always believe it's so important for women to be entrepreneurs, right? There's so many different things that we are good at. Listen,
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing. If you're good at cleaning your house, right? You're good at that. Start, go out there, make some flyers. That's extra money right there, and put it out there and said, okay, this is I'm providing a cleaning service. Start it off, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I think I was 17 years old. I used to do that. I
Yep.
made up these flyers and I used to go around and I used to say, hey, I clean houses because I know I was good at that, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
used to do that. Fine, good at hair, do that. And so that is the way that you can build,
I
because
agree.
when you have your own, this is what a lot of people fail to realize. when you are an entrepreneur, you dictate how you live.
Mm,
When you
mm,
work for someone else, they dictate how you live.
talk
So
about
do you want someone to dictate how you live, or you want to dictate how you live, right?
mm,
I know I'm the person that I play hard, so I work hard.
that's
And
right.
how I work hard in my own business. Not only do I have the nonprofit, I have different other businesses that I do, because that's what I'm looking to make, to build, have generational wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm making sure that when I'm no longer on earth, my son, my grandkids, right, are
Mm-hmm.
able to have money that they can live on, all right,
Yep.
or have properties and things like that.
Yep.
Those are the things that I encourage all my participants to do. Find something that you're good in. Let's see and let's work on it and see how we can build it for you.
I agree. And I tell people the same all the time. Like, don't follow the trends just because it looks like an industry is doing good or you hear about people doing good in a certain sector. That if you're not already in the sector, odds are you're late to the party. And so, figure your niche out. And, one of my mentors a long time ago told me, he said the riches are in the niches. And so, like, since then, my focus is always niching out something that is a little bit different than the masses because I've identified if I could bring something different to the table and master that course, that's where the riches will follow. And so I agree. Don't just jump on something because it's easy or it's because you seen your homeboy do it or you heard stories of other people being successful in it. Figure out what your niche is because it's not going to be easy no matter what path you take. And if it's not something that you enjoy, passionate about, it's going to be easy to quit at certain times, and which will then
Yes,
set you back.
definitely. When it's not going well, right?
and
When it's
that's and
not
that's
going well, you're like, okay, I can't be bothered. This is too difficult, you
That's
know?
a fact.
That's
That's a fact.
it.
Now, you said something interesting too, though, when which I agree with about trying new things, and I mean, not about people telling people that they need to figure out their niche. How do you? What's your advice on figuring out your niche? Like when someone says, "Well, I don't know what to do," like what do you encourage them to do at that moment?
So we hear that a lot, all
Mm-hmm,
right? You have to
mm-hmm,
be good at something. You
mm-hmm,
cannot just not be good at anything,
mm-hmm.
right? You have to be good at something.
Yep.
So, all right, good example. I had a young lady, and she's like, okay, I want to do nails because this is what I want to do. I said, why? Do you like doing nails? She's like, no, but at least, I can make my money. And I said, okay, but are you going to stay in it for the long run, right? Are you willing to go to school and
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
all comes along with doing nails? I don't
That's
want to go
right.
back to school, but I can do my nails. But because you can do your nails doesn't mean that you could do somebody else's nails, right?
Right. Right.
So, but one of the things that she's good at, she's an excellent cook.
Mm,
She's an
mm.
excellent cook, right? So I'm like, okay, so why don't you put some meals together, right?
Yep.
And whether it may be one or two, and just start selling it on the weekends.
Mm, mm.
Make some flies and start selling. Let me tell you, she got her own place now, right?
Eh,
She is good. See,
yeah,
find what you're good at.
yes.
When you're good at something and you enjoy, it doesn't matter if it's snowing outside. You're gonna get up and you're gonna go because you enjoy doing
So
it,
true.
right?
Yep.
If your friends want to hang out, no, I can't hang out because I have to be in that restaurant,
Right.
or I have to be at that place at
Hmm.
7 o'clock in the morning, so I can't hang out with you
Yep.
because you enjoy going there. But if you don't enjoy it, oh, I can miss it.
We
You
outside.
know,
Yeah,
like
we
you
outside.
have. There you go. That's it. That's about it. If
You're
I
right.
didn't like the work that I do, right, I would not be at my organization every morning. Sometimes I'm there. I get up at 3 o'clock every morning religiously.
Mm,
And I always say when people are pulling covers and snoring, I'm up, and because I'm trying to learn different ways of how I can actually build,
yeah.
and I don't have time to sleep, right? When I retire, I could sleep
Talk about
and
it.
do other things. But right now at my age, I feel like there's a need, a necessity for me to work hard, because there's going to come a time when I won't have the same energy as
Yep.
that I have right now. And so I have to take this time and work and do what I need to do, because so when I get to the age of 65 or whatever the case may be, I can retire and live comfortable. But I can't play right now. I don't have the time to play right now.
Yo, you said what I tell. Yo, I Warren, kudos. I know the 3 a.m. club is no joke, but it actually is so sweet once you're in that spot. And that's another thing that I see that most people who find success after incarceration learn how to maximize their 24. It's the same. Like we all are given the same 24 hours. It's just really the winners is how do you maximize it. And actually,
Right, right.
leading up to this interview, I had just finished watching a news article that said on average, or I don't know if I was thinking it was Oprah. It was Oprah Super Soul Sunday actually, and it was the guest who was on said it's studies that show that on average people spend at least 3 hours a day on their cell phones, like entertainment wise, social media, not doing things that are bringing much value, and which equates to I think it was for like 40. I think it was 40 years of your like if
Mm-hmm.
over a lifespan, if that's how much it
Right.
would waste. And I was just like, man, people waste and give away their 24, but I find people who are successful, they maximize. And so like I get up at 3:30, 3:45 the latest, and then I spend that first hour of meditation, praying, just mentally getting my thoughts and my soul and my spirit in alignment. And then after that, I'm in the gym, and then I'm back before the sun comes up. I've done accomplished more than the average person, and then I still got more time if I need to do anything on the computer while the kids are asleep, et cetera, et cetera. But that's how I get a jump start. And that's why, and I don't let anything stop that routine. So, like you were saying, we're not going out to the club because I got to get up in the morning. Like, I don't know what you
Gotta
got
get
going on, but I got to get up. it's
Yeah,
how,
yeah, I get it. I get it.
how,
Yeah,
how
it's
do you,
like that.
how do you maximize your 24? Like, what's your routine like?
So I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. From 3 to 5, I'm praying.
Mm,
That's it.
mm,
All right. From 3 to 5, and then, like God, this is what my plans is for today.
mm-hmm.
But I understand that my plans may not be your plan, right? So whatever
Preach,
your plan is,
preach.
for me for the day, right? Just open me up so
Mm-hmm.
I can receive it, and I'm able to do what you asked for me to do. So from as 5:15, get in the shower, and then I start working.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an exercise fanatic, so you probably will catch me. But I'm not gonna get up early. That's something I said I'm gonna do for the new year. But however, so those are my time. What I realized though at one point that I was spending an hour
Mm,
on social media,
yep,
and I'm like, an
yep,
hour. Do you know what you could do within an hour? And a
yep.
friend of mine told me, do you know that you can actually put a timer on the time that you spend on social media? I was like, what?
That's what I do.
Yes, they
That's
said,
what, yep.
yes. So what I do is I put a timer, and my maximum on social media is 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes, you
Mm-hmm.
hear the little thing that
Yep,
pops up. You
yep,
have reached your time, and
yep,
then it shuts you down. But you could press if you want to continue. And I was like, wow,
yep.
why do I want to continue? Why do I? What is it that being on social media is going to do to help me? Right? Really and
No,
truly, what?
yep,
What is it
yep.
that I
I
am
agree.
looking for? Social media. So instead of doing that extra time, I look at different things, different program that I can create, right? Do research, right?
Mm-hmm.
Down and write a grant. Those times I use it to build, or to reach
Yes.
out to someone, or even if it may be to just go out to lunch with my friends, or call my mom, checking on her and things like that.
Love it.
So when I
Love it.
lay down, because I go to bed early, so
Mhm.
9 o'clock I'm in my bed, right? And yes, and so don't call me after 9 o'clock because
Mm.
I'm in bed.
Ain't
And
nothing
for
happening.
everyone that knows me, they knows that.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, feel privileged if you do call after 9 o'clock and I pick up. So feel very, very
Right.
that's but yeah, and so because I go to bed, I wake up early, I need to be in bed
I
early.
agree.
And
I
so
agree.
that's the time I make sure that at the end of the day, everything that I set out to accomplish, I accomplish that plus more.
Mm. Mm.
I do that.
Mm.
Okay, I accomplish it plus more. And so the only time that I may not is when I'm not feeling well.
Right.
But I set my schedule, and I make my schedule out for the entire week. What it is
Mm-hmm.
that I need to
Mm-hmm.
do on Monday. These are the things that you need to do. These are the things that you need to do on Tuesday. And so when I'm at the end of the week, I want to make sure that um, accomplish everything. And if I don't, I have to now go back and see, why didn't you do these
Yeah.
things? You know,
Yeah.
here's the thing. For me, I lost 7.5 years in prison. Those
Mm.
are 7.5 years that I could never get back,
Very true.
right?
Yep.
And you can't make up time.
Mm-mm.
But I live with the fact that I've lost that time.
Have to.
And so what is it that I can do to maximize the time that I have left?
Right.
You know,
That's
and
right.
so that's my mantra, what is it that I can do? Okay.
Mm.
I can't cry over that time. Okay. It's done and it's gone. But the time that I have right now, how can I maximize it? What can I do to make sure that at the end of the day, I feel like, wow, you know what? You lost 8 years, but you still on top. You still there. You still there.
That's
You
right.
caught up. You
Yep.
caught up. I
Yep.
want to make sure that I'm doing that, and so that's how I live.
I love
That's how
it.
I live. You never catch me out there on the street,
Mm.
hanging out and doing
Mm.
these things. You never catch me in a lot of folks invited me to different things, that has to do with the work that I do. But I don't need to be every
I
place,
agree with
right? I
you. Yep.
don't need to be
Yep.
that, I'm like, God, listen, you lead me to the place where you know that I am going to benefit
Mm.
from that, right?
Mm.
The work
Mm.
that I do is going to benefit from that. I don't need to go there because I need to be there. For what reason? Just so I could show up and take a picture, click, click. Oh, I was
I
here.
agree.
But
I'm
what did
with
I
you.
gain from that more than some pictures? Do I need pictures? No.
Nope.
And so I have enough pictures. So make sure if I go to a certain place, I go there because either someone is going to get something from me,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Or I am going to get something, but it's going to be a feeding either way, whether I'm being fed or I fed someone, but it's going to be some type of feeding. That's it.
I agree with you. I agree. We got to do that. Got to do that. That's
Yeah,
how we show up the best version of ourselves. So
right, right.
now I know we're getting close to the end. And one question I have for you, you mentioned earlier on when you were talking about your story, how it was that hard period for you, and it's like an outer body experience. You were like out of the flow of being Clover. So what did you do to get back into being in the flow of being Clover?
Mm. Whew, that's a good question, but it's a tough one. Because it was a very laborious time for me.
Mm,
You know, Sometimes when you have kids, they become your entire life, right?
definitely.
They take up probably 99% of your time.
Right.
And so you identify yourself as the mother of these children, right?
So true.
If you are a spouse,
Yeah.
you identify as the wife or the husband of that particular person,
Hmm.
the daughter of this person. And so I was just so busy with my life, and I identified in everybody's life as this person, that I totally lost who I was,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And so
mm.
when my son was killed, I found it very difficult to function. Now, I can no longer function as the mother of two boys, right?
Mm.
So now how do I function? Who's Clover? And that's when I realized
It's
that
Clover.
I didn't even really know who I was,
Yep.
that I didn't have a separate identity outside of all these different hats that I
Mm.
wear. So going to prison, it gave me the opportunity. So I will say that, you know, and I'm just going to digress from that question a little bit, just to make my point.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of people will say that, going to prison was a terrible experience. I think that prison helped me to find me.
I agree. I agree.
It helped me to find me.
I agree.
And so I don't want it to make it seem like it was all that bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when I found me, I was able to fall in love with me.
Mm.
I was able to compartmentalize different areas of my life,
Yep.
and to know that outside of my job, there is still Clover. Outside of being a daughter, there's still Clover, right?
Yep.
And who does Clover identify as?
Mm.
And so I found myself, right, through all those difficult and those crucible times, I found me.
Yep.
And so I guess when I felt like I stepped out of myself, I was not in so many different ways, right? I lost who I was,
Mm-hmm.
and there was just an empty shell. Now, what is it when you're going to now put, what are you going to put back into that empty shell, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to put back into that person?
That's,
And so I had to pour into me.
that's right.
I had to pour into me. And then once I poured into me, I realized that I was able to love differently,
Mm.
right? I
Mm.
was able to do things differently. I was able to see people differently,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because now I was not so crowded, right? I wasn't that crowded. I was able to put certain things over there and said, okay, this is it. I could be this person over here, right?
Right.
Still the same cover,
Yep.
right? I could be that, but guess what? At the end of the day, I have to be me, and I found me. And see, once you find you,
Mm.
it's a difference altogether.
Mm.
So I realized that certain things now didn't bother me,
Yep.
right? I don't care what people say about me, right? I don't.
Yep.
You know, I've had moments where people said, "Okay, well, you know, there's these stories on the internet about you, all coming from the feds." And I said, one thing you have to understand is this, that you have fiction and you have nonfiction.
Mm.
You figure out which one,
Mm. Mm.
because trust me,
I'm waiting.
trust me,
I'm waiting.
okay, there's a person in there, okay?
Yep. Yep.
So, right, so you figure out what it is. I don't have to prove to you, this is who I am,
Me.
okay?
Yep.
And what I will not do is live in the past. There's nothing that I can change. It's
Yeah.
done
Yep.
and over.
Yes.
Only thing that I could do is live in the moment, right? I can't even live
Mm.
for tomorrow.
Mm.
I can just live in for the moment.
So
And
true.
so that embodies everything. When you find yourself, when you're in a good place, that you feel comfortable in your own skin, right? And just it's just a beautiful feeling
It
when
is.
feeling in your own skin. You feel differently, you act differently, you do things differently. You're just different. That's it.
I agree. Yeah, what you said is find me, and I think that's key to anybody who wants to do anything in life. You got to find yourself, and I mean, I think another thing you said that was super powerful was the separate identities, and I think for the listeners out there, it's really important to identify. We all have different things we identify with, like identify as parents, we identify as employers or employees, we identify as sons and daughters, we identify as friends, siblings. There's a lot of different types of business owners. So we all have these different titles and things that we identify with. And when things aren't going great in that specific area, it becomes tough for many to detach themselves from the title. And start to identify they're more than just a title. And finding you, that's when you live in that space where you identify, you don't need a title, you know who you are. And so I think the biggest thing that I would encourage all of our listeners from today's conversation is take the time to find you, especially for our incarcerated brothers and sisters. Like, this is the time you could maximize your 24 in really pouring into yourselves, like Dr. Perez said, like pour into you, find you, learn what you like. Don't just follow a crowd, and try as many new things as you can, so that way you can explore and learn what you actually like and dislike. And like she said, once you're living in that space and you have found you, you're living in a totally different world. It doesn't matter what people think of you. And sky's not even the limit anymore. You got to push it to the space. And so I would just like to personally give Dr. Clover A. Perez thank you and sincere gratitude for being here today, sharing some of those jewels. I'm hopeful that it resonates with the listeners. Once again, do you mind just leaving your socials, your where they could find the website to your organization, how they could contact you if they wanted to continue on, or if you could be a resource for them?
Sure, sure, sure. Thank you for that. So on all social media platform is Clover A Perez. Let's not forget the A.
Hey,
Clover A Perez, and also social media for A Beautiful Heart Ministries. It's just A Beautiful Heart Ministries. So that's where you can find me at. And I have my own website, which is cloveraperez.com. And for Beautiful Heart Ministries is abeautifulheartministry.org.
there it is. So, as always, we thank you for tuning in with us today. We appreciate your time. We're hopeful that we left you with some actionable practices that you can incorporate in your daily lives. And most importantly, I hope you know that, it is possible from going from being in prison to becoming a boss. And Dr. Perez is just another prime example of that. So thanks for tuning in. Get in, hold your head, and we'll be in touch soon. Peace.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, most definitely.